Dear reader, I'm Tony, and this is Book Text. It's time for another Friday Reads video, but first, our word of the day is abluvion. Abluvion, it's a noun and it means that which has been washed away. So I imagine that beaches are sometimes full of abluvion. At least the ocean is, right? So I finished 4 books this week. I have been reading many more, and I hope to start a couple of books here in the next week. The books I finished are, first, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. This I was reading while I was listening to the audiobook version, and it's the story of Ma Ramotswe, who is a woman who becomes a detective in Africa, and about some of the relationships that she has and the mysteries that she's solving. I gave this one 3 stars. I enjoyed the overall writing style, the sense of character. The plot was a little bit harder for me to follow because there's like an overarching mystery that she's trying to solve, but in between there's lots of other kind of interruptions, smaller mysteries she's solving or background stories to some of the characters. And so that was a little bit distracting. But I do think I'll continue reading the series because I have a bunch of them and it was enjoyable enough. 3 stars following Goodreads protocol. I liked it. That wasn't my favorite mystery, but I do think I'll continue reading Alexander McCall Smith's #1 Lady Detective Agency series. Then I had a really weird day where I just was desperate for something in my reading that I wasn't getting. And so I just started grabbing books off of shelves and reading as much as I could in one sitting. And I found a really interesting book doing that. That was The Old Man Who Read Love Stories by Luis Sepulveda, who is a Chilean author, passed away last year or earlier this year. And this is a really short book, but it's the story of an older man who grew up in a small village, and I think this takes place in Ecuador, in kind of the jungle that borders the Amazon rainforest, or maybe at the edge of the Amazon rainforest. And he, through kind of the circumstances of his life, ends up living for a time with the natives in Ecuador, who are the Shuar Indians, and Shuar natives, And they teach him the ways of the forest and how to respect and live alongside nature. And then, of course, there's all these settlers, lots of Americans coming in, gold prospectors who are just ripping up the jungle. And so there was this really interesting element of kind of eco-terrorism happening, right? So there was an element of ecology and the green movement, loving nature, which I really appreciated that element to it. The main plot is about hunting down an ocelot whose cubs have been killed and skinned by an American settler, and who is now on a rampage, killing every human that she can comes into contact with. The characters are really sweet. The jungle writing was very good, very descriptive. I started scratching at imaginary mosquito bites while I was reading because you just felt the jungle around you. So I loved this book, and I gave it, I can't remember if I gave it 4 or 5 stars, but it was up there. Very good. Now I finally finished reading my poetry collection, The Museum of Distance by Ashley Seitz Kramer, and I've been talking about this for several weeks. So I'll just share one final poem from this that I liked, called It's called Spacing Effect. And it has a nice kind of spacing effect. Your shadow stretches for the stonemason's yard. The room closes in one twitch at a time, slip and stall of conversation. Let me explain how I dream of deep snow, clear path for deliveries, and wait. In the dairy aisle, I count cartoon cows. I know by her exhaustion when my mother has been to the coast and back. She touches the water with her gloves on. I lotion up on the hour and divide the teas and contemplate peregrination. In this way, I am organized, keeping the wind in my bluest things. I sleep near a shark's tooth. I am hungry and live on the quarter notes, soaring up and up from the aviaries of Euclid's abandoned buildings. I cough the evening smog and pray near the eastern window as it shudders for the train and its roar. Dangerous is the morning's work and difficult. It's packed with imagery, and I still haven't unpacked what those images mean to me, but the overall tone is this kind of really quiet, sober, maybe even somber city life, and kind of the thought process that this narrator is happening. And I really liked the line, dangerous is the morning's work and difficult. I don't know why that's struck me, but maybe something about working and kind of the well, and I love mornings, so anything that refers to mornings is dear to my heart. So I really enjoyed this poetry collection. I also finished my essay collection that I was reading. This is Alberto Manguel's The Library at Night. I've mentioned a lot about this. It was a bunch of research about libraries, about the history of libraries, about book collecting, and really overall, it made me think about my own book collection and what that says about my identity and how well connected I am to that identity or to those books. The books that I've read, the books that I have not read yet, what those say about me. It's really interesting to go look at my own shelves and think about, kind of analyze what they say about who I am and who I want to be. And definitely my book collection has changed over the years. And so recently I've been getting more into literary fiction, historical fiction. Maybe I'm trying to connect to my past. I'm trying to figure out what it means to live in this present. I'm also trying to become more adult in my life. We all struggle with adulthood sometimes. And so I'm just trying to maybe come to terms with that. It was really interesting to think about my book collection. So I loved this. I have enjoyed everything I've read by Alberto Manguel, and I have a couple more books by him that I will pick up soon. Okay, since I finished that essay collection, I started reading Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Womanist Prose. This is an essay collection that deals with feminism and people of color and the kind of intersection that we need to have in the feminist movement. And I mistakenly believed that this would be a little out of date because this version is from 1991. The essay collection was originally published in 1983. And I thought, almost 40 years have passed since this was published. Surely we've moved on to other issues. Oh, was I wrong? Like, everything in here is spot on the same thing that we're talking about almost 40 years later. And I was kind of shocked by that. One of the essays that I've read so far talked about how Alice Walker tried to teach middle-aged Black women about Black history and how much in denial these women were because they had received no education in public schools, at home. Nobody was talking about Black issues, Black historical figures, Black writers, Black artists. Nobody was talking about them. And so they were shocked at the things that she was trying to teach them. And she got through to them a little bit by having them write their own autobiographies and connecting their experiences with historical events and historical movements. And I thought that was really interesting. So I have been really enjoying seeing another side to intersectional feminism that I need to be more aware of, certainly. I'm also, because I'm trying to do a poem a day, an essay a day, a short story a day, I picked up a new poetry collection. This one is called Carrying Over, edited by Carolyn Kizer, and it is a collection of poems from the Chinese, Urdu, Macedonian, Yiddish, and French African traditions. And I just barely started this, so I've read a couple of poems translated from Chinese, and these were written in the 700s, so they are quite old, and yet you see the same themes and the same images and the same feelings being evoked in these poems. So descriptive. I absolutely love how in this era of Chinese poetry really emphasizes nature writing. So I'm enjoying what I'm reading so far. As for the short stories, I'm still reading, almost done with, The Best of Richard Matheson. These are horror and science fiction shorts, and they're so delightful. I don't have a favorite story to share with you this week, but I have been reading some kind of fun ones. I've recognized a couple short stories from their Twilight Zone episode equivalents because Richard Matheson ended up writing several scripts for Twilight Zone. My family has loved watching the eerie, kind of weird Twilight Zone series. So I enjoyed recognizing those and seeing maybe slightly different endings, slightly different takes on those familiar stories. So loving this one. Still can't read it in the dark though. Too scary. All right. Then, as I said, I just started picking up books at random, and I was really wanting even though I wasn't finished with most of the books I was reading, I was really wanting to read something with a hero, kind of escapist fiction that I could just root for a character and not be let down. So, along those lines, I picked up Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. I know this is really like kind of not the same thing that kind of book that I talk about normally, but I do have a secret love for Star Wars, Star Trek, all sorts of kind of popular science fiction and fantasy. And this is the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars films after Episode 6. So after Return of the Jedi. No. I'm sorry. It's after Episode 3. So it's after Revenge of the Sith and before Episode 4, A New Hope. So he has just delivered baby Luke Skywalker to Owen Lars on Tatooine, and he's now living kind of the low, what is it called? He's living not the low life. That sounds horrible. He's living low. He's hiding out on Tatooine. Love Obi-Wan Kenobi. So his character in here is really fun. But also, I was surprised that they're dealing with some bigger issues. And of course, science fiction and fantasy, speculative fiction in general, can really explore some deeper topics by speculating, what if we lived in a world where we didn't have to deal with these issues? Or what if we lived in a place where we had already conquered this problem, this social problem? And what I've noticed so far is that the characters on Tatooine, there is a desert planet, and there is a native population that we call the Tusken Raiders. And they believe that they are the rightful inhabitants of the planet. So they are the natives. And there are settlers, including humans, including Owen Lars and his family, now Obi-Wan Kenobi, others, the Hutts, who have settled on Tatooine and are trying to tame the kind of disastrous natural world that is this desert planet. And so there's a conflict between settlers and natives. And that is really interesting to explore in kind of, a little bit at a distance, a little bit of emotional distance. I've been really interested in native issues lately. And so I'm hoping to explore some a little bit with science fiction, and of course, just to root for a hero. So I'm enjoying that in an embarrassing way. All right, less embarrassing, I'm still working my way through My Life in Middlemarch by Rebecca Mead. This is part memoir, part but mostly literary criticism and biography of George Eliot. I love George Eliot. I love Middlemarch. I am slowly working my way through reading George Eliot's works, and I'm learning a lot about the time that she was living in, the places where she lived, the places that she then wrote about, how her works were influenced by people that she knew and loved in life. It's really enjoyable. It's quite dense though, because it does involve a lot of historical documentation and criticism, theory. So I'm working my way. I'm not quite halfway through. Slowly working my way through. Also, I just wanted to share the thing I'm using as a bookmark is this hilarious artwork of a cat that is the Invisible Man, but as a cat, and so he's turning invisible, and I love it. It's called Invisible Kitten. This is by Braden Duncan. I picked it up at a Comic-Con, I think, a few years ago. Again, in one of my random grabs at the shelves, I picked up William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. I am looking forward to the Shake Tube read-along that's happening in September. I will link to one of the announcement videos below, and I'll talk about it. I'll put up a TBR before it's too long. But I just wanted to read a kind of dark but really emotional Shakespeare play. And I've read Julius Caesar before, and I remember just having a lot of feelings about Brutus. And so I'm reenacting those feelings now. I'm re-feeling them. So I'm making my way through Julius Caesar. Also, still slowly reading South Riding by Winifred Holtby. This is a kind of epic but local story about kind of the area of Yorkshire known as South Riding. And I'm just really loving the characters. It's kind of a slow burn, and so I'm reading it as a slow burn. And I feel like you need to read an epic a little bit more slowly so that you can actually inhabit the world that's being described more fully, more closely. So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying all the characters. I'm rooting for some characters, disgusted by other characters, but I have a feeling I'll turn around on those characters too and like them all by the end. It's very interesting, very well written. All right, those are what I'm reading and what I finished. I'm hoping, if I end up finishing anything from this stack this week, I'm hoping to pick up a couple of other books. I'm almost done with my short story collection, The Best of Richard Matheson, and I would like to continue reading short stories every day. So I'm planning to pick up L.M. Montgomery's Among the Shadows, Tales from the Darker Side. Maybe 20 years ago, how old is this? 20 or 30 years ago, 1990, so exactly 30 years ago. About 30 years ago, someone started collecting L.M. Montgomery's short stories into these little collections. I have a bunch of them that I found at a used bookstore last year, and I've been reading a couple of them, and they kind of center around themes. So this theme is kind of more gothic, a little bit more light horror. It says that it's, kind of filled with strange and supernatural occurrences, ghosts, thieves, embezzlers, drunkards, dark and brooding, and I just love that kind of spooky 1990 cover. I love Ellen Montgomery's short stories. She has a knack for getting you to love a character in a short amount of time. And usually for me it takes a whole novel to be attached to a character, but she can do it in a couple of pages, and I love that about her. So I'm going to hopefully pick that up once I finish reading my other short story collection. I also, because summer is draining away, even though, folks, I've been in a heat wave for 2 months, and it's very hot. I'm excited for summer to end because fall is my favorite season, as it is for many of us. But I have this book called Summer by Edith Wharton that I need to read before summer's over. So I'm hoping to pick this up soon. This is the story of a young woman named Charity who is living with her drunkard adoptive father, who might be a little creepy, as in like incestuous creepy. And she dreams of escaping her isolated village with a visiting man who comes through town and kind of ignites her interest in the outside world. I love Edith Wharton. I'm looking forward to this very much. So I'm hoping to read a couple more books soon. How are you doing? Are you reading a bunch this summer? Have you slowed down? Have you sped up? What's your reading life looking like right now? Please tell me in the comments. I'll have a couple of videos planned for the next few weeks. I have a sneak preview. It was easy for me to say. A sneak preview of some books over here that I will be hauling in a video shortly, and TBRs for the Fall into Reading read-along, and also September's ShakeTube read-along. So look forward to more coming soon. And remember, there's always another book.